We're taking a peek into geek culture and sharing our top 10 fandom favorites. Let Your Geek Side Show presents Geek Culture Countdown. Hey guys, this is Kitty.
And this is Susan.
And we're coming to you live from the Sideshow Studios in Southern California. Welcome back to the Geek Culture Countdown. Today we're making a different sort of count. A body count. As Avengers Endgame barrels towards us, we thought we'd take a step back and compile our list of the top 10 deaths in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the ever-changing world of superheroes, many characters may come and go and even come back, but these powerful plot moments left a major impact on audiences everywhere for their emotional weight, story significance, and downright dramatic outcomes. Listen along to find out which heroes, villains, and civilians of the Marvel Cinematic Universe will forever be memorialized in our countdown. Let's get started.
I'm not gonna lie, this is like a pretty upsetting one to have to write.
I felt a little morbid crafting the intro and stuff for this podcast, just because I was like, usually we're so excited and celebratory, like these are the best of this thing.
And this was like womp womp.
Most traumatizing.
Yeah. And beyond that, it was like, we have 10, but we left out so many that I felt guilty.
Yeah.
And then I went, oh my God, how did we leave out this character? But, you know, I guess maybe we'll have to revisit it or do like a special mini podcast for the ones who were left out.
Like a pour one out for these guys who didn't make our list. Also, I think before we go any further, this is full disclosure, there will be spoilers. If you're not caught up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even up to like right before Endgame, there will be spoilers in this podcast.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you've been warned. You've got like a hot 5 seconds to get out of here before we start spoiling some serious sadness for you.
Yes. So please, if you have not seen every movie in the cinematic universe, you should probably turn this off.
Because this was part of our mental preparation, especially for Endgame, because who knows what's going to happen there. But should we get started?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. So number 10 on our list is Agent Phil Coulson. So I know what you might be thinking. A lot of people probably immediately go, but he's not dead. Well, as far as the MCU proper, in the 22 films we've had so far, is concerned, he is dead. So Nick Fury's right-hand man, Phil Coulson, was one of the absolute binding threads of the first phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He not only appeared in most of the Phase 1 films, but he also appeared in a number of the Marvel one-shots that kind of tied in all of the stories and how S.H.I.E.L.D. was moving around. And those especially really proved that he was more than just kind of an annoying bureaucrat. It was that S.H.I.E.L.D. was something more. And so in the Avengers film, his sacrifice kind of was the drawing together of all the heroes. It was that binding agent because he was killed by Loki when he was stabbed through with the scepter, and his dying words to Nick Fury were this was never going to work if they didn't have something to, and then he passes away. But as we know, if you've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he does come back in some other ways, but still, his death was one of the first big sacrificial moments. There were other ones, obviously, with like Yinsen in Iron Man, but this was a big, like, we have a death that is catalyzing the heroes to get together, and his death really drew the Avengers together. And even though it didn't quite stick, number 10 on our list had to be Phil Coulson.
Number 9 on our list is the Ancient One from Doctor Strange. The Sorcerer Supreme is of an unknown age, and who knows how long she has been protecting our dimension. But here's what we do know. She trained Baron Mordo and Stephen Strange, thinking that she was leaving behind a balance of power once she died. And her death was, some consider a sacrifice. I don't necessarily consider, I think of it more as like a product of a battle that took place. However, her decision to draw power from the dark dimension in order to keep herself alive for so long broke the faith of Baron Mordo, and he left, you know, the whole Sorcerer Supreme Legion, I guess. I don't know. Like, what are they called? Masters of the Mystic Arts. That's what I was looking for. Leaving Doctor Strange alone not alone, but as the leader to protect the Sanctum. Her death is on this list because it was a clear death of the mentor that was needed to progress the story situation in Doctor Strange. It wasn't necessarily monumental to the entire cinematic universe, but it was Doctor Strange's push that he needed in order to understand the gravity of what he was dealing with. He was dealing not only in his own realm, but in multiple dimensions. I would also argue that without the death of the Ancient One, he probably would not have gone up against Dormammu, and his cleverness and use of the Time Stone is ultimately what led to the destruction of Dormammu in the Dark Dimension. So that is why Doctor Strange number 9 is the Ancient One to kind of push Doctor Strange into his next level of heroism.
Number 8 on our list, talking about the death of a mentor as well. This is Marvel, and although her death was a recent one, told you we were getting into spoilers. Dr. Marvel, aka Dr. Wendy Lawson, was an important casualty of the Kree-Skrull conflict because her death really kind of proved as an awakening point for so much of the film. We're led to believe that she was shot by a Skrull, just further continuing that propaganda that the Kree had against this race of people. She was, in fact, though, shot and killed by Star Force Commander Jan Rog as she attempted to destroy her lightspeed engine technology to prevent the Kree from getting their hands on it, because she did learn she was fighting on the side of the unjust aggressors in the conflict. And her sacrifice wasn't in vain, and necessarily it wasn't a sacrifice, but the whole instance surrounding her death was not in vain, because it inspired Carol Danvers to finish what Marvel set out to do, destroying the engine and absorbing a blast of Tesseract-based energy that turned her into Captain Marvel. And so this was not only significant in the creation of a hero, but it also really, in a cool way, represented the MCU twist on the classic Marvel Carol Danvers relationship, with also Jan Rog being partially the aggressor, partially the reason that a device explodes and grants Carol Danvers her powers. In the comics, it was the Psyche Magnetron, but here it is the Lightspeed Engine. So Marvel's death, whether you consider it a sacrifice or not, enabled Carol to take control of her own agency and make a choice to help end a war that then turned her into a superhero. So Marvel is number 8 on our list.
Number 7 on our list is Peggy Carter, and she is one of the only characters on this list to actually live a full life and die of old age.
I think there's like
only one other one, and I looked at the list and I was like, I'm pretty sure that there's one other one. Peggy was a colleague of Steve Rogers in World War II and a co-founder of S.H.I.E.L.D. alongside Howard Stark. After Steve was unfrozen, he was able to visit Peggy in her care facility, and when she passed away, Steve Rogers was one of her pallbearers. I definitely cried the entire scene, and watching Sharon up on that pulpit giving out one of the most infamous Captain America speeches in the comics. Yes, it was Captain America who did say, plant yourself like a tree beside the river of truth and say, no, you move. That is a Cap line, but putting it in the context of Peggy Carter and Sharon Carter somehow made it feel more... it was very appropriate for the tone of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because in the comics, Steve is saying it to Spider-Man. So it's very different, but it still is inspiring to a hero. So Peggy made this list because of her contributions to S.H.I.E.L.D. and what she represented in the life of Captain America. My only hope for Endgame, I hope for nothing else, because I don't like doing. I don't like doing fan theories, and I don't like doing expectations and hopes. But I have one for Endgame, and that's Peggy and Steve finally get to dance.
Oh,
and that's it.
Oh,
that's
my
the only
goodness!
thing I want.
She tells him that he's late, and it just
Yep.
Oh my god!
And she would have waited forever for him.
You know, it is such a rare instance in these, and you just see how many of these characters, like, I died in a battle, I died in this, and then just like the tumultuous, the fact that a character got to live a full and very fulfilling life. And her impact on the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Her impact is also beyond. I mean, she wound up with her own television series, and like Jarvis, who worked with her.
She was a Marvel one-shot as well.
She was a Marvel one-shot as well. And then Jarvis, who worked with her in S.H.I.E.L.D., ultimately becomes the name of, Stark's computer system. So there you go. And then... Anyway, it goes on and on and on. So number 7, Peggy Carter.
All right. And so the other character on this list who did get to live a full life.
I was like, pretty sure it's this one.
we have a way of doing that by accidentally putting, thematically it does fit. Number 6 on our list is Odin Borson. So Odin was the former Allfather of Asgard, and he did have one of the more peaceful MCU deaths, even though his death led the way to destruction for his sons. After the events of Thor: The Dark World, Loki had tricked his adoptive father and usurped the position on the throne. He sent Odin to the Shady Acres care home on Earth and cast a glamour on him, so the old man was left pretty dazed and didn't really remember himself. But he did eventually overcome the spell, and he found himself in Norway, and then Loki and Thor found him in Norway with the help of Doctor Strange. And when they encountered their father, he was very different than the warmongering, armored up all-father that we've seen for so many of the films. He was tired. He was at the end of his life, but he wasn't too regretful. His main regret was that when he passed away, that Hela's banishment would come undone, and he revealed to his sons about their sister, and then just said that Ragnarok was coming. But I love when he's like, oh, I overcame the spell, and I think your mother would be proud of me, and just the whole idea of the Viking afterlife. So we do get to see his spirit kind of ascend to Valhalla.
By the way, I just want to point out that the MCU has now gotten to the point where it's as complicated as reading a comic book storyline.
Yep.
Because if you just listen to what you said, like that sounds like something straight out of the comics. Like Odin, after the events of Dark World, was placed
Loki
under
tricked his father.
Loki tricked his father. He put him under a spell. He overcame the spell. They found him with the help of Doctor Strange. Like that all sounds like a comic book.
And by the way, there was a sister trapped in an interdimensional portal that we didn't tell you about till just this moment.
Like hashtag here comes Ragnarok.
And he's like, and I'm out.
Yeah. But yes, it sounds like a comic book.
Yes, but he did die peacefully. He did ascend to Valhalla, and his spirit joined Frigga, who had passed away in Thor: The Dark World.
One of the ones that we regrettably could not make on the list.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I fought for her, but there were more significant moments that needed to be on this. But for all the peace that his death represented, it sure sucked for Thor after that. So Odin is number 6 on our list.
So now we've gotten to the point where we do the honorable mention. And my honorable mention is a shout out to all of the characters that did not survive the snapping. There were so many characters that perished during the snap that we did not have time to put them all on the list, because that would seriously have been the whole list. So now we're at this point. If your character was snapped, unfortunately, they are not on the rest of the list. But
technically at this point, I mean, we're before Endgame. So technically at this point, yes, they are dead.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen, but
these
yes,
are
they
all
are
characters.
dead.
The characters on the list are all ones that have died. So I was, this is what I actually wrote in my notes, and I want to read it to you, Kitty, specifically. I would like to give a shout out to all of the characters that did not survive the snap, aka every character that I have ever loved in the MCU, Kitty. One time, Kitty and I watched this movie together, and I counted all of my favorite characters that disappeared and were dust. So the loss of Mantis, Drax, T'Challa, Bucky, Sam, Hank, Janet, Hope, Peter Quill, Shuri, Doctor Strange, Wanda, and Peter Parker. I was like, Peter, wait, there's 2 Peters that went. Like, I think that's all of them, but I also feel like I'm missing some of them. So think of it in the order. I tried to think of it in the order. Anyway, if I'm missing one of them, that's why we have that email address. So I was so upset that I legit hated Infinity War for a good month after I saw this movie. And I maintained my hatred and held a grudge against it, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if it has done nothing else, it's make us fall in love with these versions of these classic characters. We are so deeply attached emotionally to every single one of these characters that losing half of them was completely devastating. It is something that I have learned to live with, but you know what?
Some people move on.
Some people move on, but not us. Whatever it takes, Kitty. Whatever it takes.
I mean, well, because what I think is also the funniest is, like, on all this press circuit, so many fans were asking, well, what about like this inconsequential support character who only showed, like, what about the intern Ian from Thor: The Dark World? Like, all these things. They released a 2-part book series, I think, called The Cosmic Quest or something. And I bought the one that was like, if you want to find out about Thor, Darcy, and Eric Selvig, or Jane, Darcy, and Eric Selvig, like buy this book. And thankfully, they're all fine. But it was a kid's book, but it was a tie-in that promised me knowledge as to whether or not.
And so now, what did you just admit to? You just went out and bought a 2-part kids book so you could know something that happened in the MCU. That's how much this is affecting us.
And apparently, if I recall correctly on the reporting, Howard the Duck is also fine, but Lady Sif did get snapped.
Again, Kitty.
It's stuff like that where it's like we're so desperate to know about all of our favorite little side characters.
Well, all of mine are dust. So thanks for that. Rude, Thanos.
I was
Rude.
gonna say,
I really
don't-
hope the Ant-Man theory is correct. That's all I'm saying, Thanos. You earned it. Yeah, that's right. I'm talking about an internet meme.
Oh,
you
no.
earned it, Thanos. You earned it.
Oh,
Anyway,
no.
moving on.
So there are some deaths in Infinity War that did not come as a result of the snap, and I'm using this as our segue
Yes, I was
to
gonna
continue the rest
say.
of the list.
So number 5 on this list, we don't trade lives, Captain. I still can't decide if I feel like Vision was right, but I will say that the death of Vision in Infinity War broke my heart. Vision is one of my all-time favorite characters, not just from the movies, but from the comics. And we had to watch Vision's death through the eyes of the person who loved him most, while he was staring into the eyes of the person he loved most. And then we had to watch him die twice. And that was heartbreaking. I personally still can't deal with it, and I have a really hard time watching that section of the movie. It just hurts my heart. Vision better be back in Endgame or I will riot. But just watching someone who we saw his creation, we saw not only him at the end of like being born at the end of Age of Ultron, but we saw him evolve. And what Bruce Banner says is that, you know, he's not just the stone anymore. He's different and he's grown. And the best parts of Vision are the parts that didn't necessarily come from what he was created with or from. So it's just something insanely wonderful to see a character grow like that. But then also, once you attach to him, watch him grow, watch him change, watch him love, to then watch him die, and then watch him die again is the worst.
And it was even like, they did such a good job with ratcheting the tension in that scene because we do get a small moment of victory or what we perceive to be victory at the destruction of one of the Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
And we're like, yes, there's a way to stop Thanos.
Yeah.
And then Thanos is like, just kidding, you thought. And that's what lends that second death, because it's also with Vision dies our hope at that point in the film that there was anything they could do to stop Thanos.
But that's really funny to me because that's when I watch the film, that's not at all how I thought of it. I never, because I knew because at that point, you know, he has the time stone.
Right, but you still think, like, what happens when one of the stones is destroyed?
Right.
But
I still was like, nope, he's just going to turn that thing around. And then I'm going to have to watch Vision die again.
Hey, but it was a kind of cool, and
it was a very cool moment, and
Easter
it was
egg
with
the
so
white,
cool.
like when he like lost all the color.
It was a very cool Easter egg. But also having to watch Wanda watch him die twice was also devastating as well. So number 5, I wanted him higher, but you know, we all make sacrifices, but we don't trade lives. Number 5 is Vision.
Number 4 on our list is Eric Killmonger. So this was, you know, because sometimes there's the Marvel Cinematic Universe is quite tricky with, oh, look, this person might have died, or like Baron Zemo is like, oh, I got away with my plan, I'm gonna kill myself, and then T'Challa is like, no, not so fast, and like so sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I want to see them beat the bad guy, but Eric Killmonger was one of those characters that by the end of it, yes, his methods were a bit extreme, but so many fans were like left questioning, well, like he wasn't necessarily wrong. Some of his execution was wrong, but he was saying things that had some emotion, like some real depth to them. It wasn't
especially
just,
when you considered his background and how he had to live his life up until that point. He wasn't wrong for his own truth, but he was wrong for morality.
Trying to create a global empire.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Eric Killmonger though was a devastating death, also because he chose it.
Yes. So, N'Jadaka, also known as Eric Stevens or Eric Killmonger, was an extremely challenging villain who laid claim to the throne of Wakanda in Black Panther. So, in combat with his cousin T'Challa, he was stabbed by a spear in the vibranium mines of the Great Mound, and he removed his suit mask and started to talk in his dying moments. He started to talk about the fact that his father had always promised him he was going to see a Wakandan sunset someday because that was the most beautiful thing in the world. So T'Challa helped get him to one of the cliffs above ground because they were in the underground, where Killmonger delivered one of like the best speeches in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I completely agree
and I
with
didn't
that.
even write it down because I don't want I don't want to paraphrase it here, but it's just like you have to see that for yourself.
You can't just say it. You have to watch Michael B. Jordan deliver it.
Yes, and about preferring to die like his ancestors than be kept alive in bondage to be given a second chance on someone else's terms. And at that, he removed the spear from his wound and he bled out, dying rather peacefully, looking out at the sunset. And his death was a really important moment of agency because, like, where we see Carol Danvers and it's like, oh, she chose to destroy the thing that could have killed her and got her powers. He knew full well that he was just going to die when he removed that spear and bled out. And he had received T'Challa's forgiveness, not that he necessarily sought that out, but he made peace with the fact that it was his time to go. And I think one of the cool things that to also consider was the idea that, like, when he underwent the Black Panther ritual, he didn't have any ancestors except for his father to see. And so it's like, where did he go after that? Like, was he with his Wakandan ancestors? Would he go back to the spirit version of Oakland? Like, just there was just so much nuance and layer to his death and the circumstances just surrounding death in general in the Wakandan culture. And he was just a profoundly tragic villain.
I also like to consider the idea that T'Challa grew from that as well, because not only did he understand that he defeated his enemy, but he also helped his enemy find peace. And that's something that is very necessary for a ruler to have to understand, and something that T'Challa took steps to accomplish while he is king.
Because the victory isn't necessarily always a straightforward, haha, I killed the bad guy and now I'm unopposed.
It is so much more complicated than that. And all the rulers of Black Panther understand that.
Yeah. So Eric Killmonger took number 4 on our list.
Number 3 on our list.
We're getting into the more emotional ones. I was like,
like, we got really, I mean, the top 5 are all very emotional ones. So number 3 is Yondu. We've lost a lot of characters on this list, but this is one that I think still gets everyone every time. He might not have been Star-Lord's father, but he was his daddy, and that's something that breaks me personally, but also there is a difference between, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is so good at doing things like thematically. So the idea that, yes, Peter Quill has a biological father. He has a planet named Ego. He's a celestial. You know, that's cool. But that he was raised by a man who was a Ravager. He dealt in children and broke the code. But he was able to redeem himself at the end. He sacrifices his own life so that Peter Quill can go on living after he has helped the Guardians defeat Ego, Peter's biological father. Obviously, part of the sacrifice is his own redemption, but mostly it's a touching act of love from a father figure passing on his own legacy to his son. And also
then the soundtrack.
The soundtrack with Father and Son by Cat Stevens, again, and the fact that, you know, he was able to have that Ravager funeral with all the lights and that was the colors.
That was a celebration.
That was a celebration. Yeah. And then watching Rooker's performance of that whole thing, like, when you know that Michael Rooker / Yondu has made that choice, like, you know it before it happens, because he's decided when Rocket gives him those two, he gives him the suit and he gives him the flight. He sticks the flight on him, the pack for the rocket, and then he keeps it, and you're like, you know what's going to happen, and he knows what's going to happen, and it's beautiful, it's devastating, and it's something that, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe does this really well with the parents, and having a parent figure who's not necessarily the father was so important. Because you have Marvel, who's essentially the woman who told Carol she can. Yondu's the man that told Peter that he could be anything.
And this is not new in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Historically, so many of these characters have absent or just unkind, uncaring fathers. I mean, we see Carol Danvers' father tell her that she can't. Thanos as a father figure to Gamora. Just like these ideas that, and like Howard Stark is absent from Tony's life because of circumstances. But there's historically this very
Eric
tense-
Killmonger on this.
yeah.
Like he grew up without a father as well.
Yeah, so there's just this intense legacy of and like Odin. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just like jumping
there's
back through the list.
There's
just
so many like parental figures, but when it comes down to it, like even though a lot of these characters were missing them, they were the best of the best were able to find someone.
yeah, Vision and Ultron.
Yeah. I mean, if
If
you
you
want
wanna-
to go, or Vision and Jarvis.
But what better of the franchises to have this kind of a moment than Guardians,
Yeah.
because it's all about that messed up little found family. Yeah, so that one just they're so good with the symbolism and the just those themes that carry over.
So,
but
yeah.
and only in a moment such as this could Michael Rooker with his Yondu voice say he weren't your daddy.
Yeah, he weren't your daddy, and then people started crying.
Yeah, and people started crying, because if anyone else in the Marvel Cinematic Universe said that, I'd probably just kind of be like, huh, okay.
Yeah, well, 3 is Yondu.
All right, mic drop.
Yeah.
Number 2 on our list is a twofer. This is the assassination of Howard and Maria Stark. Speaking of the absent Starks, the assassination of Howard and Maria Stark is one of the most impactful deaths in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, based on just how many things and people it affected as like a ripple. This was a hit mission orchestrated by Hydra as an attempt to get access to the super soldier serum, which Howard Stark was able to recreate in 1991 after his involvement with Project Rebirth and being given a sample of Steve Rogers' blood. And I don't know at what point in 1991 they figured it out, but by December 16th of that same year, the Winter Soldier staged an accident to cover up for his successful assassination of the couple. And this sudden death resulted in Anthony Stark being raised by Edwin Jarvis, and their passing was blamed on a car accident. This incident had even farther reaching consequences, though, as we got to Captain America Civil War, because Tony Stark learned that Steve Rogers had kept Bucky's association with the murder a secret from him. They found 5 other super soldiers that were created in the Winter Soldier program, though those test subjects were deemed too dangerous and they were kept in suspended animation as a result. And then the fight between Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, and Bucky Barnes was extremely intense. Like,
it's probably one of the best fight sequences ever.
Yeah, and just the severing of the robotic arm and the shield.
Like, you don't deserve that.
Yeah,
and the dropping of the shield.
And just the shield.
Then just Steve Rogers hitting that Iron Man mask over and over.
Yep. I mean, just this. It was a secret. As much as
the secret truth, I don't want to say their deaths didn't mean anything, but like as much as these deaths seem like, you know, just a Batman-esque origin story where it's like the parents died, he's raised by the butler, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But what it actually did was so much more, and it actually caused the events of Civil War that then would lead to the fact that no one's in the same place when Infinity War starts.
Right.
Like, think of the difference that a united front could have had when Infinity War starts. Like, could it have really stopped Thanos? Probably not. But like, But like, let's just pretend
in a perfect world,
the Avengers are still together. That might have been a whole other situation.
And this is one of the deaths, I think, because most of the deaths have an immediate response. Like, Ancient One dies, Doctor Strange kind of knows what he's got to do. Marvel dies, Carol Danvers has to finish the work.
Yeah.
Howard and Maria Stark, it was played off as an accident for so long, and that's even a thing that we believed. I mean, we went through so many Iron Man films where Tony's just like, yeah, my parents are gone, like that's how it is. And then we get this beautifully, like, kind of not like I want to say satisfying, but not like satisfying, but, you know, like a really
it's an oh crud moment. You're like, oh my god, like the moment where you figure out that the thing that you've thought is not the thing at all.
Yeah, and especially this death, because of how many characters it reached, really reinforced the strength of the fact that this is a shared cinematic universe. This death didn't impact just one character. So Howard and Maria Stark are number 2 on our list.
Now you might think, how can we possibly top that? So, and
we'll tell you.
The truth is, if you want to talk about characters that their death and lives affected characters in the other characters in the cinematic universe, there is none that has touched more than Loki. And this might be a controversial pick for the number 1 choice. I fought for it. But hear me out. Loki served as a major part of the cinematic universe, not only in the growth of Thor as a character, but the growth of every single one of the Avengers. His scepter became the Mind Stone. The Tesseract was what he came through at the beginning of the Avengers. He is the first villain that fought the Avengers.
He had Clint under mind control. He actually, like, even when you go beyond him, Doctor Strange knows about him because he's not supposed to come back to Earth because of the destruction that he caused in New York. So even when you have characters who never technically meet him, they still know about him. So Loki's been around since the beginning, since phase 1. So when he died, it was devastating because also beyond all the destruction that he's caused, he's actually quite the fan favorite among most people who are fans of the cinematic universe. So I also like to think that Thor's last words to him, "You really are the worst, brother," which may or may not have a comma in it, because that changes the meaning. Yeah.
You really are the worst, brother. You really are the worst, brother.
Yeah.
So I want to think that is going to serve as Thor's motivation moving forward.
Let's at the Russos on Twitter and get the script
I would really love to know if there's a comma, because that changes the whole meaning of that line. But watching Loki die at the hand of Thanos was one of the more shocking moments, especially because it happens within the first 10 minutes of Infinity War. And Loki was one of those ones that you always think is going to come back. I mean, even later in the movie, Thor's like, "Oh, well, he's died before."
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I'm sorry. We end Thor: The Dark World with Thor, okay.
Thor thinks Loki's dead at the end of
I get
Dark
really
World.
sad for my boy Thor, because every time he has this visceral response, and then Loki's basically like, "Hey, you care." But then we go from Thor: The Dark World to Thor: Ragnarok, where this guy's watching a play about his own death.
Yeah,
starring Matt Damon.
Yeah, exactly. But if you think about it, that's so Loki.
Oh, Loki.
Oh, Loki.
Cue laugh track.
Right, but I'm serious. Like, he has touched every character in the Avengers and will
whether or not they wanted him
whether or not they wanted him to, and even ones who didn't meet him still wound up meeting him. I think the only one he hasn't met is probably Ant-Man, right?
Maybe.
But we don't know. He could have been there. He could have been there the whole time.
But also more interesting to note is in the marketing materials for Avengers Endgame, they did a series of 32 character posters, 16 in color and 16 black and white, of characters we suspect may or may not be in the film in some way. And Loki had his own black and white poster confirming that he is dead at that point.
Yep.
But who knows how he'll show up. Plus, he's getting a Disney Plus show.
He's getting a Disney Plus show, but I imagine it's going to be a prequel. It just seems it's going to be some sort of...
Oh, there's no way.
Or during the years that he served as Odin.
That would be
so funny. Anyway, but number 1 is Loki. Fan favorite wise, and because of how many characters he has impacted throughout the course of what is it called? The Infinity Saga?
Yeah,
that's what they're calling it. The first 3 phases. That's what they're
calling it now.
Yeah.
But also, and also the fact that not only has he touched so many characters, but he also seemed untouchable. And so when you see him go down in
and it's a pretty graphic one. It's not just like a stabbing or something. Thanos is holding his throat until he turns a color and he's bleeding from his eyes.
I have the hardest time with anything that involves asphyxiation or choking, because I start holding my breath as well, and it's just
don't do that, Kitty.
I know. Gotta remind myself to breathe, but that one is exceptionally hard to watch, just because
you're right, because you think Loki's untouchable. Loki has survived so many of these movies. He's faked his death before. There's no way he can die, and then he can die. Turns out he can. So number 1 on our list, Loki, Odin's son. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, wow.
I threw in the Odin son.
Oh, man.
So some of the notable ones that we had to leave off.
Yeah, this is our quick pour one out.
Yeah, pour one out for Gamora.
Frigga. Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1.
Groot from Volume 1.
Who else did we leave out? T'Chaka.
T'Chaka. Also,
you got this.
Oh my gosh. He in the cave sacrificing himself.
Oh, Ho Yinsen.
And then also Ironmonger.
Who else we got? Hela technically died, maybe with Surtur.
Whiplash.
Yeah. Who's really sad about that one, though?
How about all of the iron suits?
Yes, that is true. That is true.
What are they called? House Party
Protocol.
Pour one out for House Party Protocol.
Oh my God. The Warriors 3, which is one of the saddest
Warriors
things.
3.
Oh. Who? Oh, Dr.
Oh, yeah,
Erskine.
yep.
Sorry, our producer was Captain America 1. Yeah, Dr. Erskine.
And then I, as a joke, when we were making this list, was like, what about Nick Fury? He fakes his death pretty well in Winter Soldier. And then you also have Bucky, because poor went out for Bucky, because he died in Captain America 1, only to be brought back as the Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Wow, Marvel. This is
Red Skull.
What a fun. Yeah, I know. But
I know.
those ones, yeah.
I know. But still, there's so many, and we've gone through so much Marvel, and now we have Endgame coming up.
The Warriors 3. That I just made myself sad with that one.
The Warriors 3 was a sad one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Half of Asgard and then another half of Asgard when they got snapped,
Yeah.
you know.
But we do have confirmation that Valkyrie is around.
And that's another spoiler for Endgame. I mean,
she was on the international poster.
that's true.
But also, I'm curious about Korg.
Oh.
Korg and Meek.
He's just rocks, though.
Yeah. He just rocks. Got some pamphlets.
But
got some tickets to Endgame. Gonna see it with Meek.
Oh, Meek's dead.
Yeah.
Oh, Meek!
Anyway.
Meek should have been number 1 on our list.
Oh my God. But still, you guys, this was a really, really difficult one to put together. So I am very curious as to how controversial our list is.
Yeah, and then what the Russo brothers are gonna look back. Yeah, when they listen to this podcast, what they're gonna look back on and laugh about us putting in here.
If we're gonna have to do a brand new one after Endgame.
We probably will, but we won't know until we see the movie. So, to recap our list, honorable mention goes to all the victims of the snap. Number 10 is Phil Coulson. Number 9 is the Ancient One. Number 8 is Mar-Vell. Number 7 is Peggy Carter. Number 6 is Odin. Number 5 is Vision. Number 4 is Eric Killmonger. Number 3 is Yondu. Number 2 is Howard and Maria Stark. And number 1 is Loki. So, was our list a proper tribute to these fallen favorites? Or was this countdown a little lifeless? If we missed someone that you think should be on the list, be sure to check out our blog and send us your opinions at podcasts@geeksideshow.com. And that was our top 10 deaths in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Do you enjoy the Geek Culture Countdown? We are proud to bring you pop culture content completely ad-free, but that doesn't mean we don't need your support to help keep us going. Please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform and help spread the word about our podcast. We welcome fan feedback. Email us at podcasts@sideshow.com with your thoughts and suggestions for how we can make our shows even better. Plus, tune in for our other pop culture podcasts. See your favorite comic and film characters evolve across 2 generations in the bi-weekly Then and Now podcast. Hear exclusive interviews with celebrities and pop culture industry leaders as they let their geek side show in Look Who Showed Up. Then get all the latest pop culture news with our daily briefing, a 2-minute breakdown of all the biggest geek headlines perfect for your Alexa or Google News briefings. We wouldn't exist without your continued support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to let your geek side show.